Hey everyone, it's Wednesday and we're back with another live stream. We've got some breaking news. The Fed has slashed interest rates for the third time this year. And tonight in the stream, we're going to be talking about what effect this has. We're going to be kind of looking at what the Fed comments were and where things potentially could be headed next and into 2024. So we'll be talking about that. Plus, we have an absolutely iconic home that has hit the market. If you're someone who just kind of likes window shopping, looking at cool homes, especially mid-century modern or post and beam, let me tell you, this is probably one of the finest examples of mid-century post and beam modernism in the country, if not the world, and it's on the market. So we're going to take a look at that. Plus, there's a story out of Florida recently talking about the buyer-broker agreement. Remember back in 2020, there was the lawsuit, the class action lawsuit against DOJ and realtors that had to do with buyer agent commission. It changed the whole structure. Well, we're starting to see some repercussions from that. And there's going to be a big news flash. It's not in favor of consumers. So we'll be talking about that. As always, guys, thanks for hanging out in the channel. My name is Joe. And every Wednesday, 6:30 p.m., we are talking about all the latest and greatest real estate news. If you're new around here, welcome. If you're a repeat watcher, thanks for hanging out live in the channel. And if you're checking out the replay, thanks for checking out the replay. As you guys know, if you're familiar around here, the best part of live streaming is getting able to hang out with you guys in real time, chat with you guys, talk with you guys. So please, at any time, if you guys have questions or comments, whether it's about the articles that we're talking about, or you just have like a general real estate question and you want someone to answer that's not ChatGPT, now's your time. Go ahead, put it in the comments, whether you're thinking about buying, selling, renting, even if you just have a general market question. I promise I'm not going to try to sell you a home live on YouTube. Although if you want to buy one live on YouTube, we can do that too. So enjoy, stick around, and let me know where you're watching from and if you have any questions. So we're going to get into it very shortly. Before we do that, guys, right down here, there's the like button. Please do me a favor, hit that like. Really does help me out. And I hope you enjoy the stream. We're talking about interest rates today, guys. We're talking about the Fed. Jerome Powell, he slashed interest rates. There's been a ton of talk about interest rates pretty much the entire year. Interest rates have been on the radar for the American consumer really since about 2022. So for the last, honestly, about 2.5 years or so, interest rates have been a really, really pivotal part of not just the real estate landscape in the United States, but also the general kind of economic makeup. Again, real estate does account for about 30-ish% of the United States GDP. So what happens in the real estate sector and market often has further implications and signals to the rest of the economy. And that's why it's really, really important right now. So we're going to get into some things. We've got a video to watch from NBC and a little article to go over. So we're going to be taking a look at that. This ad is going to end in like 19 seconds. Then I'll put the video on. So obviously, Trump is very, very interested in lowering interest rates. This is likely going to be the last press conference that Jerome Powell has as being a part of, the Fed, because we do have a new Fed chair that's going to go into place. Trump is currently interviewing people for the new Fed position. Hasn't made any announcements yet. We thought it might come before Christmas, but we're not sure yet. Obviously, it'll be very interesting to see how the market reacts to whenever that announcement comes based on whoever is announced as the new Fed chair. There's a couple options that Trump is kind of weighing. There's some interesting choices. There's some good choices and there's some bad choices. But we will save that for another stream once we have more information on when the Fed is announced. So what I want to do right now is share this. Bingo. You guys should see this. Okay. That's going to go. Oh, wait. No, we want this. Bingo. All right. Full screen that. All right. So this is out of CNBC. This is just kind of like the basic, like garden variety sort of, we're going to watch the announcement from the Fed. So let's see what CNBC has to say about the recap. We need to unmute it so you guys can hear. Now it'll work.
Just seconds ago, the Federal Reserve decided to cut interest rates for a third straight time. The board voting for a quarter-point rate cut. That is what experts were predicting.
So quarter-point rate cut, this is what was predicted, and this is exactly what we got. Although we weren't sure up until about a week or 2 weeks ago if rates were actually going to get cut. It was one of those things where we were sort of kind of like, we're not sure what's going to happen. Again, this was a difficult rate cut for the Fed because, and they'll talk about this, and we'll go over this in the article, but difficult rate cut for the Fed because of the recent government shutdown. When the government was shut down, a lot of the statistical reports and analytics that the Fed usually uses to kind of guide their decision-making were not produced because, well, the government was shut down. So they weren't making those reports. They weren't putting out that data. So the Fed had a difficult time with this because some of their sources that they typically use to make these decisions were not available. So we weren't sure about this cut up until about a week ago. And then as of a week ago, some economic data came out and it did look pretty good in favor of a rate cut. So they did knock it down a quarter of a point. Remember, this is the federal funds rate. This is the overnight rate at which banks lend money to each other. This is not the interest rate. Obviously, this isn't the mortgage interest rate, but we know from our past streams that obviously the federal funds rate and the mortgage interest rate do kind of move sort of in lockstep together. So there is some relation there. Hey, Innovative, good to see you, buddy. I hope you haven't missed me too much. I've been gone for a couple of weeks, but glad to see you're here. I hope you're doing well. 10-year Treasury flat on the day in the face of rate cuts, up from 4.08 to 4.14 over the last week. No mortgage rate relief from the Fed. Correct. You make a wonderful observation. I'm going to pull up a Mortgage News Daily, which I think rates went down like 0.05% as of the end of the day, which is pretty much nothing. It's negligible. But again, guys, one thing to remember is when we do have these interest rate cuts and there's wind that they're coming, that the Fed is going to lower interest rates, typically those are baked in to mortgage rates. And we've talked about this before where, it always seems like somebody's always got some insider information. It's never the consumers that have insider information, but man, it seems that Wall Street's always got the scoop on the news. And Wall Street and mortgage bankers knew about a couple of weeks ago that this quarter point rate cut was coming and it was pre-priced in. Additionally, on top of that, mortgage rates don't always exactly reflect the federal funds rate. So unfortunately, not a ton of direct mortgage rate relief from this interest rate cut. But we'll see what happens, over the course of the first few months in 2026. I think one of the bigger things to think about, and again, they'll talk about this in the video, is what the Fed forecasted for 2026. And that's just one rate cut. So the Fed is kind of forecasting that, hey, get comfortable because this is where we are at. Now, the Fed has cut 3 meetings in a row. That's quite a bit for Jerome Powell's Fed. So we'll just have to see how things shake out. But yes, Innovative, you are absolutely correct. As of right now, no clear benefits to the mortgage rate scenario from this rate cut.
And it is the final interest rate decision of 2025. Let's zoom out and look at the Fed's decisions over the.
So here you go. I'll take my little face off real quick so you can see. You can see from January to July, the Fed just sat on their hands, did nothing. They took a very wait and see approach. But at this time, a lot of people really raked Jerome Powell over the coals and the Fed because they were like, Jerome, why are you not doing anything? Things are improving, economy's improving. But Powell made some remarks about, I wasn't sure about tariffs and inflation and would tariffs increase inflation. So they took a very much wait and see approach. And you'll see when Jerome talks, he's going to be talking about, sort of why they felt it was appropriate to do these 3 rate cuts, especially the rate cut in December.
This year, we've seen cuts since September after the interest rate did not change for most of the year. It's also worth noting the board members were flying blind a bit before casting today's vote. That's because the government reports that the Fed usually relies on have been delayed or canceled
So we were talking about that because the shutdown, the reports the Fed relies on weren't there. So as she put, the anchor put, kind of flying blind, so to speak, which is, true to a certain extent. Innovative, what do you got for me? Let's see. When Trump replaces Powell with the most spineless yes men he can find, you'll get rate cuts and money printing. Real estate is going to be a great hedge against dollar devaluation. Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm really hoping he doesn't just hire the yes man that I think he probably is going to hire. That's the worst choice. There are a couple of other candidates that are a little bit more loose in policy, but not quite as reckless as some. So hopefully we get a good decision out of the president, which I won't hold my breath for that. But you make a great point. And if we do get cuts and we do get money printing, money's going to be cheap again. It's going to flow. There is a potential that, the dollar will devalue for sure, even more so than it already has. And there is a potential for real estate prices valuation to go up, hence your hedge against inflation. Now, I am not one of those agents, guys, and I hope that you know this by now. I am not one of these agents that pushes the narrative that today, right now, is always a great time to buy a house. I'm a firm believer that it's a very personal decision, and there is no good or bad time to buy a house in general. The only person that can determine if it's a good or bad time to buy a house is you, or like your partner or your family or whoever's, making that decision. However, if you're in a spot where you've been thinking about purchasing a property, if you're in a spot where you feel comfortable with the monthly payments that are, you're going to be responsible for based on interest rates and purchase price, if you've got the down payment saved up, if you feel like you're in that spot where, hey, you know what? I've been thinking about doing this. I was maybe thinking about pulling the trigger in March, April, May of 2026. Now could potentially be a great time. Yes, rates could potentially go down in 2026 if this new Fed chair has his way. Now, keep in mind, the Fed chair is just one person and it's a committee that votes. So even if we do get an ultra mega MAGA yes man as the chair of the Fed, he can't unilaterally change rates, but what he can do is he can influence markets by what he says and sort of the future outlooks and comments that he makes. But what you'll see happen is if that does happen and we do see a decrease in interest rates, it's quite possible that, you guys all saw what happened in 2020 and 2021 when interest rates were absolutely cut. Affordability was much better at that time, but not for very long. So it is quite possible that we are going to see prices go up. Now could be a really good time to buy if that is something that you've been working towards, if that's something that you're prepared for. Like I said, you already have to kind of be down that path. So if you're out there and you were thinking of buying in the spring or summer of 2026, I got news. Winter of 25 and 26 might be a really, really good time because you can always refinance if the rates get cut. If prices go up, well, good news is you're going to have your price locked in at a lower price, and you'll be hedging against the devaluation of the dollar with the equity increase in the house. So, innovative, yeah, another great idea, great comment. All right, let's get back to this.
Result of the shutdown of the government. NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans is at the Federal Reserve in Washington, D.C. today. At the center of the action, Christine, for people watching at home, what does this third straight cut mean for our money?
Yeah, all the reporters here eagerly reporting that this is the third cut in a row, as expected, that quarter point. But this is essentially to juice the American economy a little bit, as it is, as you said, flying blind without all of the data that we're normally used to. So the Fed trying to give a little bit of support into the economy here as they wait for some more important information on jobs and inflation in the weeks ahead. The Fed clearly is stepping in here trying to support the job market. We've seen a few signs of weakness in the job market, but
we have seen a few signs of job market weakness in some sectors, but the job market's not breaking. Labor's not breaking. And that would be the quickest path to significant interest rate cuts would be if the labor market broke. And for the labor market to break, we would need to see like over 300,000 jobs openings. We would need to see major movement, with job loss claims. And it just doesn't seem like we're quite at that level yet. Yes, we've got, residential construction, specialty construction, some of these areas that we typically look at and see, okay, that sector of work is struggling. That means that broader implications, broader signals of the economy slowing down. But we're just kind of barely seeing some signs, which is why interest rates have been cut so little so slowly. So Powell and the Fed is trying to keep the job market healthy. That's Powell's number one goal, and he said it again today. He said, "When I leave this job, I want the American economy to be strong. I want inflation to be as close to 2% as possible, and I want the American job market to be strong." I don't blame him. Those are two good goals as the person in charge of the American economy. Those are two good goals to have.
Again, we haven't had all of the big data points that we want to see. At the same time, though, also concerned about inflation. Inflation is still higher than the Fed would like it to be.
And Christine, this vote was a bit unusual because board members didn't have, as we said, all that government data on inflation and employment. But have we gotten a bit of that more recently? What do we know about the state of the economy right now?
Look,
it'll be interesting to see what she says because we don't have a ton of information. We were looking at some ADP jobs reports, but they're a huge payroll company, but they don't have the access to the same data. They have access to a lot of data, but not the same data that the federal government has access to. So yes, indeed, flying blind for a little bit. It'll be interesting to see what she says, her take on the American economy is. Hey, Robert, how's it going, buddy? Good to see you in the stream. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you've been well. Hope you've been doing well. Thanks for hanging out. All right, let's
know, for example, if you look at some of these private sector reports out there, that the job market may be showing some signs of weakening, specifically small business job cuts. We saw ADP, a private sector payroll agency, say that 32,000 jobs were lost in the month of November. So that's a sign of weakness that clearly a lot of people are watching out here. But at the same time, inflation in September up 2.8%. The September PCE, that's something that the Fed really watches. They would like to see it to be 2%. So the balance here for the Fed is really tricky, you guys. It has two jobs: to keep, inflation under control and to keep the job market strong and solid.
And that's the difficult part. It's hard to do both of those things with the interest rate tool because they're inverse of each other. If the job market is slowing, you think, okay, let's cut rates. Let's make money a little bit cheaper. That'll help inject some capital into businesses. That'll help open up some capital for small businesses. Money will be cheaper. They'll be able to make new products, open new stores, hire more people, right? But when you cut rates, typically it's inflationary, and the inflation goes up because more money is injected in the economy and it's cheaper to borrow. So it is a real kind of toe the line situation. And that's why the Fed has had such a difficult job over the last 2.5 years.
Right now, the thing that helps the job market is something that could hurt the inflation story. So that's the indecision and the careful nature you've seen from the Fed so far.
Yeah, and Christine, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, I know, is expected to speak at a news conference less than 30 minutes from now. You're there.
Yep.
What do you want to ask him?
Yeah, good idea.
We're going to hear what the Fed thinks about inflation and jobs next year. They're going to give some new economic forecasts. That's going to be important. Want to know specifically also about maybe some of the dissents on the Fed. What am I talking about? The Fed is not just one person who makes this decision. It's a board. And there were 3 people who did not agree with this current decision to cut by 1/4 point. So we want to hear more about.
And we'll talk about that. That was one of the very interesting things, is that 3 people dissented, and it's interesting to see who dissented and why, in what way.
What's happening inside the Fed, why they're having more trouble building a consensus there. Is that political? Is that something happening in the economy? We'll hear from the Fed chief in just about 25 minutes.
All right. Sounds good. Christine Romans, thanks so much.
All right. So I want to get rid of this, and we're going to go to this article, and we can kind of cover this a little bit. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And it'll just be very interesting to see what shakes out from this and what effect it does have and what happens in 2026. There's so much at play, because between now and mid 2026, we're going to have a little bit better idea of what the job market has done. We're going to know kind of what inflation is doing. We're probably going to have a new Fed chair. Midterm elections will be ramping up by middle of this year, campaigning and things like that. So it'll just be very, very interesting to see what happens. All right, let's dig into this article before we look at an insane mid-century home on Zillow. All right, guys. The Federal Reserve on Wednesday cut its influential interest rate for the third time this year, pointing to a job market that Chairman Jerome Powell said may be weaker than it appears. The cut of a quarter point, a cautious interest rate move by the Fed, could make it cheaper for the average Americans who hold a mortgage, have credit card debt, or need to take out or refinance a personal loan. It would also help businesses borrow at lower rates. So there's a good little summary recap of why it makes things better for average Americans. But it comes at the risk of stoking inflation that is yet to fall to the Fed's preferred levels. At a news conference following the Fed's Following the Fed's announcement, Powell said that the tariffs were helping to keep inflation higher than it might be otherwise. Given the Fed's dual mandate of promoting maximum employment while keeping prices stable, any move the central bank makes comes with risk. And Powell, I was going to say Powell is noted for this kind of the saying, there is no risk-free path for policy as we navigate this tension between our employment and inflation goals, Powell said. Our obligation is to make sure that a one-time increase in the price level does not become an ongoing inflation problem. The Fed chair said the committee decided to cut rates because of a number of factors. First of all, gradual cooling in the labor market has continued, which is true. We talked about that. We just covered that about small businesses. He said unemployment is now up 0.3 from June through September. Powell also said the central bank believes that there has been an overstatement in recent jobs numbers of about 60,000 jobs. In his view, data showing that payrolls have been pacing at about 40,000 jobs added per month are, in fact, really pacing at 20,000 jobs per month. So it'd be interesting there. And this might come as part of the government shutdown, perhaps, right? Like we didn't have the information, we didn't have the data, government was shut down. Maybe this is why he's a little suspicious about the numbers. All right, innovative. We've got some more stuff. Fed also announced that while they're halting QE, qualitative easing, they're still going to let MBS fall off the balance sheet. This is fantastic. If you're looking to buy in the next 6 months, buyer's market in Texas. Yeah. What was the amount of that? It was like some crazy amount that they were still purchasing. I forget what it was, but the Fed, they now, and I read it and I can't remember. And like the numbers are so big. I can't remember if it's billion or trillion. It's just so much. I don't recall what it is, but I guess another great point. The rate cut had been anticipated by investors, but some doubt remained after a few members of the Fed's committee expressed concerns that lower interest rates could push consumer prices higher. The Fed's target range is now set at its lowest level since late 2022. Stocks soared after the Fed's announcement, with S&P 500 closing higher by 0.7%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average surged more than 510 points. Again, because investors see this as a good sign. Investors like low interest rates. The lower the interest rate, the cheaper the money, the more the economy is juiced, the more that people spend, the more that businesses invest, the better the stock market does, typically speaking. So whenever the Fed makes a sort of a positive statement about interest rates, the economy, or cuts interest rate, the stock market typically reacts very positively. And as you can imagine, when it's the opposite, the stock market reacts very poorly to that. The Fed also announced on Wednesday that it would buy billions of dollars of U.S. Treasury bonds per month. Yes, billions per month. That's what it was. It was like $2 billion a month or something like that, in a move aimed at bolstering the plumbing of the financial system, which also helped push stocks higher. 3 Fed officials dissented from the cut. Fed Governor Stephen Miron, who is on temporary leave from the White House, voted for a half-point cut. Regional presidents Jeff Schmid and Austin Goolsbee voted for no change in rates at all. The 3 dissents reflect the most friction seen in the normally united committee since September 2019. So essentially, you had one guy in the Fed that was like, nah, we need to cut more. We need to cut more. And if you're wondering who might be Trump's front runner for the Fed chair, there's a good clue right there. It's the dude that wanted to cut by an extra quarter point. He wanted to cut half a point in total. I obviously the point was a quarter rate cut. So if you're wondering who's in the lead, probably in Trump's book, it's probably most likely Stephen Myron, who yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I got kind of mixed feelings on that guy. In economic projections released alongside Wednesday's interest rate statement, Fed officials said that they saw growth picking up next year more than previously expected to 2.3%. Fed officials also projected one more interest rate cut next year and another in 2027. So, guys, again, unless there is a big development, big change in the labor market, we are probably not going to see interest rates really change too much. I have a pretty strong suspicion that they're going to stay between 6% and probably about 6.3% for the foreseeable future. Again, unless there's a major fundamental change in economic outlook. Again, I always say this, all this could change if someone decides to start throwing missiles at someone, right? Geopolitical tensions are high, as they typically have seemed to have been in the 21st century. And the moment that one of these crazy dictators starts to take a real problem and starts firing missiles off or moving troops into an area, that can also really shake things up. So, but if things stay relatively calm and straightforward, no major economic changes, then it is quite likely that interest rates are probably going to remain around the same. Mortgage interest rates will remain the same, but we'll see what happens. Again, by mid 2026, all of this could be out the window. This could all be out the window. And that seems to be an overarching theme with our administration is good luck figuring out what's coming next. Language used in the Fed's statement indicated that Wednesday's cut would likely be the last for now, at least until after its next meeting on January 27, 28. Powell said essentially the same thing. We are well positioned to wait to see how the economy evolves, he said in response to a question asking if the Fed is now on hold. Asked about the growing divergence between how consumers at different income levels are spending, with higher income households continuing to spend at a rapid clip while lower income households show signs of struggling, Powell said that in his view, it's clearly a thing, which I think we all know, dubbed the K-shaped economy. And it's the K-shaped. It's K-shaped because, well, you can't see. You can get my cursor. I guess you can't see it. It's K-shaped because you have one group of the American people that is kind of going up in spending and economic stability. And then the other group is getting worse. So we have, a group of people that are going down and a group of people that are going up. It's very difficult for the Fed to sort of tailor the economy to benefit both those groups of people. But it's not a good thing to have that. The K-shaped is not ideal. We don't really want that. We want the middle class to be strong. Dubbed the K-shaped economy, Powell admitted that he did not know how sustainable it was. The best we can do is to have price stability and a strong labor market, he said, which, I mean, if you're Jerome Powell, you might as well get this tattooed on your face. Strong labor and price stability. Like strong labor, price stability, that is Jerome's thing. Powell also predicted that housing is going to be a problem for a while due to a number of people who have very, very low mortgages from the pandemic period and how high rates on new mortgages are now. Again, he's just referring to a continuation of the lock-in effect. And it is going to be a problem. That will stay a thing until eventually that will, kind of trickle out. But it's going to take a while. And originally when this all went down in 21, 22, 23, I felt that the housing market wouldn't really get back to sort of what we all know, pre-COVID housing market until at least probably 2032, 2031, 2032. So I think we're going to be along this ride for another, 6 to 7 years when it comes to the overarching theme of housing, which is elevated rates, tough inventory, tough affordability. Will there be movements in those things between now and then? Yes, obviously, absolutely. Inventory may fluctuate, pricing may fluctuate, but overall, as a general theme, I don't think we're going to be seeing any substantial relief anytime soon across the board. Again, some markets will increase in affordability. Some markets will have price fluctuations, but as a whole, I don't think the real estate market is significantly changing on a national average. Fed officials also said that they expect inflation to decline to 2.4% next year, down from their previous expectation of 2.6%. Hey, that's great news. Available indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a moderate pace, the Fed said in a statement. Job gains have slowed this year, and the unemployment rate has edged up through September. Inflation has moved up since earlier in the year and remains somewhat elevated, members of the Fed's Open Market Committee added. Inflation for goods has picked up, reflecting the effects of tariffs, Powell said. But, he noted, the services component of the economy is experiencing disinflation. It's really tariffs that are causing the most of the inflation overshoot, he said, which makes sense, right? I mean, you impose new taxes on goods. Those taxes get passed on to consumers in the form of price increases. Bingo, inflation. And this was a lot of the concerns and fears from the Fed and other economic pundits across the United States when Trump decided to do his Godzilla tariffs and go wild and just tariff everything from here to kingdom come. So we're certainly feeling the effects of that. At least that's Jerome Powell's assertion. And I got news. You can think what you want about Jerome, but is there anyone that knows the American economy and economics better than him? I don't know. I think he's probably pretty well educated on why things happen with the economy. And if he thinks it's tariffs, I'm inclined to go with that and believe him. Affordability has remained a major issue across the U.S., with President Donald Trump, who has repeatedly and ferociously called for the Fed to continue to cut interest rates, recently downplaying those concerns after having campaigned on them. Gee, doesn't that sound like a politician? Yikes. Oh, we got David Matney in the house. David, my good friend David. Thanks for being here, buddy. Thanks for checking in. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying warm. Was it got to be like 30 degrees in Omaha right now? Is there any snow? You guys got any snow, or is it just real cold? Hope you're doing well, buddy. Good to see you. Following the news of the Fed's cut, Trump said at a White House event that it should have been at least doubled. Of course, Trump's never happy, in case you haven't figured that out. He is always complaining about something, always is riled up. And of course, we know this. Trump wants the interest rates as low as possible because Trump knows that when interest rates are low, housing does better, the economy does better. And in order to offset some of the shock from the tariffs, Trump needs a few things. Trump needs low energy costs, a strong dollar, and he also needs low interest rates. Those things, if he has those things, we can probably bear the brunt of tariffs. Interest rates are not going the way that he wants because the Fed is doing their job, is exactly what they're designed to do. And the dollar is más o menos. And energy prices are okay. That is the one thing that we've seen a little bit of relief on. As we know, gas prices have been falling a little bit. Those things have fallen some. David, let's see. Oh, warmed up today to 30. Oh boy, 30. Break out the shorts and sandals. Yikes, 30. All right. That's warming up. Today here in sunny Southern California, I think we had a high of 81 today. I wore a t-shirt and drove with the windows down. It was wonderful. So yeah, it's a very harsh California fall. Very, very harsh out here. MH, buddy, what's going on? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. 62 in Denver. All right. Hey, that's not bad. 62 in Denver's not bad. That's pretty good. I feel like is that I think that's a little bit like warmer for this time of year. I would feel like Denver's supposed to be cooler. So definitely no snow there. Minnesota 0 is open jacket weather. Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that. All right. following the Fed's cut, Trump, oh yeah, at least double. Doubt about the overall economic picture lingers, thanks in part to the fog of a data blackout, the result of the prolonged federal government shutdown this fall. Very little data on inflation has been released since our meeting in October, Powell said. When the delayed data does arrive, Powell said central bank policymakers will have to take a look. Let's take a look at it carefully and with a somewhat skeptical eye, given the lag and technical reasons related to the way the data is normally collected. So there you have it, guys. There's our article on what's going on with the Fed. We will have to see where interest rates go. All right, guys. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. Normally I do the crazy house first, but I want to switch gears a little bit. Oops, not that. We want this one. There we go. Hi guys, I'm back. And we're going to take a look at a house. And it is absolutely iconic. I know it's probably not everybody's style. It's a mid-century home. I saw this come up on Zillow, and it is, I mean, I'm a kind of a historic guru. I like old homes. I like historic things. I love World War II history. This home, historically speaking, is iconic and it's very, very important. So I want you guys to check out, and you guys are probably, if you guys are like architecture or house people, you guys will probably know this one. Check out this amazing property. Okay, guys, this is an iconic home in LA. I'm gonna go back to the listing so that you can see everything. So this is the Stahl house. This is a post and beam that is absolutely insane. Built in 1959, and you can get a glimpse of it right here. Oh my gosh, look at this thing. Let's go over the basics really quick. 2 beds, 3 baths, 2,200 square feet, $25 million. And with just your 20% down, you're only going to be on the hook for $155,000 per month. Yikes. I wonder what the freaking taxes on this are. Oh my gosh, the taxes are insane. Here in California, basic rule of thumb is that for every $1 million you purchase, it's about $1,000 a month for every $1 million. So my rough math would be $25,000 a month in property tax. $25,000 a month just in property taxes. Crazy. Now, obviously, guys, this home, designed by Pierre Koenig and Buck and Carlotta Stahl. This is, and Julia Schulman. You'll see a lot of historic names here. Julia Schulman, amazing photographer, really laid the groundwork for some amazing photography techniques. All had a hand in this house. In fact, Julia Schulman was one of the people to photograph this house. But part of the reason we're seeing this price point for this is obviously the location is insane and crazy. The look is insane and crazy. But this is where provenance comes in. This is where when you wonder why did this one Ferrari sell for $20 million? Well, it's because they made 3 of them, and this one was signed by Enzo Ferrari before he passed, or something like that. So this is in that vein of the history, and the story is probably worth as much as the actual item itself. It's almost like, I don't know if you guys watch like Antiques Roadshow, or one really cool thing I like to do when I get bored is watch like people appraise Rolexes on YouTube. And they always talk about like, oh, do you have the box? Do you have the original papers? Like, yeah, the watch is valuable, but the box, the original papers, the little bag that it comes in is like almost as valuable as the watch itself. And this is kind of the thing that we're talking about here, where it's like, yeah, the house is amazing, but also the provenance, the history, and just the vibe is a premium. So let's get into it. Before we look at the pictures, we're going to go over the description first. Case study house number 22, universally known as the Stahl House, stands as one of the most important residential works of the 20th century, a museum-grade architectural artifact preserved with exceptional care and offered now for the first time by the original family. I mean, this truly is a special home. I hate to like fanboy over homes, but I mean, this is really really important. This is an important house, especially if you are, like I said, a mid-century person, an architecture person, a photographer person, or a real estate person. This hits all of those boxes. Designed by Pierre Koenig for Buck and Carlotta Stahl, the home became immortalized through Julius Schulman's legendary 1960 photography, later recognized by Time magazine as one of the most influential images in the publication's 200-year history. Its impact on architecture, visual culture, and the global perception of Los Angeles remains unparalleled, all of which I would agree to. Normally, I tear this BS salesy mumbo jumbo apart. Not this time. This is all very true and very accurate. Privately positioned at the end of a gated drive, the property offers a rare combination of discretion, security, and serenity high above the city, with exterior cameras supporting the home's privacy. This offering represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to acquire a true cultural landmark for collectors of design, patrons of architecture, or institutions seeking to safeguard an American masterpiece. There is simply nothing comparable. Koenig's disciplined steel structure, its floating corner, and the sweeping 270-degree panorama of the city create a living environment that is once serene, elemental, and awe-inspiring. A City of Los Angeles Historic Cultural Monument and listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the home carries its Mills Act designation and an unbroken chain of family stewardship since 1960. Now, this here, Mills Act, two little words, very important. In California, you can Mills Act a historic home. We call it enrolling in the Mills Act or Mills Acting it. And what the Mills Act does is it actually provides a certain amount of property tax relief to homeowners of historic homes that have been recognized as being historic if they maintain them, keep them up in a historical manner. And basically preserve them. So basically the state's saying, hey, you've got a real gem of a property. You've got something that is culturally, historically significant to the state. And we're going to give you a tax break, assuming you lay out a plan to help preserve it. So I was talking about $25,000 a month in property taxes. It's possible that you could get that cut in half if you show an appropriate plan to preserve the home. This is not merely a sale. It is a passing of a responsibility, a search for the next custodian who will honor the house's history, respect its architectural purity, and ensure its preservation for generations to come. In a city filled with remarkable homes, there is only one Stahl house. For the right buyer, this is a legacy to carry forward, shown to pre-qualified clients only. I'll make a deal with anybody in chat right now. If anybody that's watching this live, or screw it, even if you're watching it on the pre-recorded or the replay, if anybody is interested in buying this house, I will represent you as a buyer, and I will do it for the lowest amount of money that I am allowed to do it for, which I can't disclose. But this is one of these homes that's so iconic. It's such a historical thing. It's so beautiful. Like, this is one of these homes that for me, like I would faint if my name was just associated with a home like this. There's a Green and Green, again, another famous architecture firm out of the mid-century Los Angeles. There's a Green and Green home here in Claremont. I always said, man, if those people ever need to sell that home, I'll do it for basically nothing, just so that I can be in the company of such icons like Green and Green or the Stahl House, things like that. So guys, let's get into the fun part. Let's get into the eye candy. Let's get into the feast for the eyes, and let's look at some of these photos. So this is a Julius Schulman photo that was taken in the 60s, hence the very vintage look. And I mean, even at that time, like, if this doesn't make you feel something inside when you look at this photo, you might want to check to see if you're alive. Because even just looking at this photo, I mean, it's just so whimsical and dreamy and airy and serene. I mean, it really is so gorgeous. And of course, it only gets better. This is a much more modern photo, as we can see. Very interesting to see how the city has changed. This is not the same exact angle of photo, but if you look, you can clearly see delineations of where streets were, major streets, and delineations where there wasn't development, or at least there wasn't residential development. Go over one photo, and now look, we've got skyscrapers, lights everywhere, planes in the sky. I mean, really, really changed quite a bit. But wow, look at that. Remarkable. Truly, truly remarkable. And what's crazy is you look at it and you think to yourself, there's not much there. I mean, look, it's just a glass rectangle with a flat roof, but it's really so much more than that. It's really so much more than that. Robert, let's take a look. That makes me wonder, do people feign fake interest to do free house tours at these high dollar homes? Great question, Robert. Every once in a while that will happen, but it's not too likely. And with a home like this, if you want to go see it, they're going to ask either for a pre-approval for $25 million, which, yeah, you could fake, or they're going to want to see your money. They're going to want to see an account statement. If you say, oh, no, I'm not getting a loan, I've got the money, trust me, they're going to say, okay, yeah, sure, we'll trust you as soon as you show us an account statement with your name on it. And for a property like this that is so expensive and has so much historical value, if I was the listing agent, I wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, send me your pre-approval via email and yeah, we can arrange it. I'm calling the client. I want to talk with the client and the agent. I might even do a pre-meet. I might say, hey, let's meet at my office. And then I want, let's chat about the house and your interest. And then we can arrange a time to go see it. I'm also going to call, if they do give me a pre-approval letter, I'm going to call that lender and say, hey, lender, is this person your client? Have you worked with them? Have you talked to them? Have you verified their funds? I may also ask the client to provide a client like this that, interested in a $25 million home, probably has a personal banker, private banker, something like that. I'm going to want to talk to that person. Essentially what I'm going to do on a listing that's, 10, 15, $20 million, we're going to do a lot of vetting to make sure that this doesn't happen. We don't want any silverware missing. We don't want any issues. We don't want anybody casing the joint. And we just don't want any looky-loos. This still is someone's home, right? It still is a residence for someone. So it's not super common that people do that. Most of the time, that stuff happens at open houses. So if there was a really, really nice house and it was going to be an actual public open house, that's where you get your people that are like, I just came for the finger foods and the amazing view, which is cool. That's fine too. But most of the time with these houses for private tours, you're going to need to be very strongly vetted. So beautiful, beautiful home. I mean, every angle of this, the beautiful breezeway blocks here. I mean, the slats, opening, it's so 1960 House on the Hill, James Bond, you could just someone lounging, smoking a cigarette, enjoying a martini. It is crazy. I mean, look at that. What a great photo. Downtown in the distance. And I mean, so very mid-century. I mean, even the lighting with the clean lines on the exterior, I mean, it's just so cool. And it's crazy to think that this is a $25 million house. This is the curb appeal of a $25 million house. But if you are a post and beam person, if you are a mid-century person, if you are a mid-century modern aficionado, this is $25 million worth of curb appeal. Oh man, eat your heart out. This is, I mean, guys, stunning. Just absolutely amazing. Let me know, guys, what do you think in the chat? If you're here live audience, what do you think? I know obviously this is a very particular house. I would love to know what you guys think. Do you guys think this is the type of home that you'd want to live in? Do you want to think that, do you think that this type of home is not livable? Would you live here if you had 25 million bucks, or would you want something different? I'd love to know. Look, for me, guys, this is right up. Like, I would, in a heartbeat, I would move here, live here, and I would never leave. I would do live streaming from right here. Wouldn't that be cool if instead right back here, you saw that view? I think that'd be pretty sweet. Old Carson joke. What happens when the smog clears out of Los Angeles? UCLA. Yes, the view does change based on the smog and the temperature. That is absolutely true. Absolutely true, MH. Beautiful, beautiful double-sided fireplace. Very, 60s stonework. I love, obviously, all the period correct stuff in here, keeping true to what the property is. A historical photo, original photo here. So you can see the house has really not changed much at all in the 60, 40, 25, in the 85 years that it's been around. Did I do that math right? It's 75, 1960, 70, 80, 90, 20, 10, 20. Yeah, 65 years. 65 years. Original kitchen here. So cool to see it. And there is your plaque. Do studios pay to use these types of homes for movie sets? Yes. Yes, they do. Now, they may not use this home because this home would be extremely expensive. Now, I could see maybe for a very, very high-end movie, you know, if it was a very big blockbuster and they just needed an iconic statement. I mean, imagine if you were filming a movie and you were like, yeah, this is going to be the shot. You know, like imagine this, but you know, this camera moves down and you know, the main character is you know, the main characters are in the spa and it swoops around. I mean, most of the time they're going to use houses that are a little bit more generic than this and in areas that are not as high end, because this home for to be rented out for the day would probably cost hundreds of thousands of dollars just to rent it out for the day. And you could probably get the same effect at a much different home that doesn't have the provenance that this home has, that would probably cost you like tens of thousands of dollars a day or even less. But yeah, studios absolutely do that. They will contact you. If you live in the LA area, you can put your home on a list and say, yeah, if you want to film a commercial here or a movie here or TV show here, yeah, you absolutely can do that. Maybe if I had 50 million, gotta pay the taxes. Yep, that's true. That's true. That's true, MH. That's smart thinking. All right, catch back up to where we were. So you can see the home hasn't changed a ton. Beautiful hillside view over here. Obviously here, there's probably some development over here now, but hillside view when it was originally built. And this is the kitchen today. So you can kind of see, you know, the kitchen of the original kitchen to the kitchen of today. It's still pretty original, which is awesome. I'm an originality person. I love when people can preserve the original details of something like a car or a house or something like that. So kudos. It looks like maybe the microwave. I don't know. Let's see. Is the microwave in the original one? Oh, did I miss the original kitchen photo? Oh, we don't see that side of the kitchen in the original photo, but it looks like the cooktop was replaced. This is probably an induction electric. Obviously, the refrigerator is non-original. Double ovens do look like they could be original. That's kind of cool. Continue. I mean, I know, guys, we've looked at the view, we've drooled over the view, but come on. I mean, guys, like, it's amazing. It's totally amazing. Like, this is just stunning to me. That's the view from the primary bedroom. I think that could work. The reverse angle view from the living room. Culver City, maybe? Or Studio City? Studio City, I think. Someone in chat that's familiar with LA. No, this is Studio City, because this is Beverly Hills right here. This is West Hollywood, Sunset. This is actually probably Sunset Strip right there. So this area is Beverly Hills. This is Studio City. I think. I'm not I don't live in LA, so I mean I do, but I don't. Oh my God. Guys. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. We'll continue. I mean, it looks good any time of day, any weather. Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So guys, there's the Stahl house. $25 million. Again, if anybody's interested in purchasing this home in the chat or on the replay, I will represent you for an amazingly affordable fee. And boy, this is just an extravagant, amazing home. Yeah, of course, Zillow is not even trying to do his estimate on this. They're like, no, we're not touching this thing. We can't zestimate that thing. So all right, guys, we are coming up on an hour. I'm going to cover one more article. This article is not very long. And the reason I want to bring this article up to you guys is because, again, it's kind of one of these like fraud related articles. I want you guys to be aware of this. We've talked about wire fraud before, and here's another good example, and it's still happening. Okay. It's still happening because this was recent. This was only 2 days ago. This article came out. before. We got innovative. Find someone that looks at you the way that Joe looks at the weird stall house. Yes, I would agree because I'm smitten with the stall house. I love the stall house. So yeah, if someone looks at you the way that I look at the stall house, that's a good indication. Innovative. Oh man, more great comments. So you said the weird stall house. So innovative, does that mean that you would not live in a house like the stall house? I mean, I know you're a Texas guy, so I know you probably like, the more traditional plantation style stuff, but you wouldn't live there? You wouldn't live there? Are you telling me you wouldn't live there? Let me know, innovative. I want to know. I'm curious now. All right, guys. So this next article takes us to Housing Wire. Oh, we got to share this tab instead. Bingo. All right. Housing Wire. Yes, I figured you'd be this type of cabin in the woods. And that's cool. And you know what? Honestly, I'm a fan of that too. Like there is something about a little cabin tucked away in the woods, nice and quiet, very peaceful, very tranquil. You got the smell of the pines, the crackling fire. I'm with you. I can get after that too. If you haven't figured it out by now, I just really like cool homes. So it kind of fits in for what I do. All right, guys, Housing Wire. Buyer owes $24,000 after breaching buyer's broker agreement. Arbitration fines. Arbitration awarded $24,000 to a brokerage after a buyer breached an exclusive broker agreement under NAR rules. So the reason I'm bringing this up, guys, is because, again, NAR and the DOJ have said, buyers, for your benefit, for your sake, we're enacting some new rules. And the rules that we're enacting are that you have to have an agreement with between the buyer and the buyer agent before you can even look at any homes. So no more, I just want to go look at a home, call up an agent. Hey agent, I just want to go look up the home. Just let me in. Like, I probably don't want to buy it, but just open the door for me. Those days are dead and gone, well, for the most part. And now what we're seeing is that obviously when you are a buyer and you want to look in homes, you have to enter into an agreement with the buyer's agent. Now, this agreement outlines what the duties are. The fact that the buyer's agent owes you fiduciary duty. It outlines how that buyer's agent's going to work for you, and it also outlines how much they're going to get paid. Well, what happens when you sign an agreement? Well, when you sign that agreement, it means that you're agreeing to work with that particular broker and or agent. And you need to pay very special attention when you sign this as a buyer, because if that agreement is exclusive, well, that means that even if you buy a house with someone else, and this exclusive agreement is valid and active, well, guess what? You still got to pay that broker, that buyer's agent, even if they're not the ones that helped you. And this is where the problem lies for this particular article. A Florida brokerage won $24,000 in arbitration after a buyer breached a mandatory broker agreement. The case highlights how new NAR rules may lead to more commission enforcement and collection actions. Since the implementation of a mandatory buyer-broker agreement via the business practice changes outlined in the National Association of Realtors Commission Lawsuit Settlement Agreement, many have wondered what happens if a buyer breaches the contract. So we know, in a case where the agent breaches the contract, well, the buyer could fire the agent. If there was a serious breach that caused financial hardship, well, the buyer could even sue the agent. But what happens when the buyer breaches the contract? Well, the same thing. They go to court. And that's what happened here. Jeff Lichtenstein, the broker owner of Florida-based Ecofine Properties, found out when his firm entered into arbitration with a buyer after they bought a property with the help of another brokerage, despite signing an exclusive agreement with Ecofine Properties. So basically what happened is this buyer contacted Ecofine Properties, Jeff Lichtenstein, and said, hey, I want you to help me buy a home. Jeff said, okay, great. In order for us to help you, you need to sign this buyer broker agreement. It outlines what I do, my services, and how much I get paid. And it also says that you're responsible for paying me. Now, we will ask the seller to pay my fees, but if the seller doesn't pay, then by signing this, you're agreeing to pay it. Guys, this is not unique. This is standard. So if you're a buyer and you're out there and you get asked to sign a buyer broker agreement, you need to read it very carefully to understand what you're on the hook about. And in a stream, maybe next week, what I'll do is I'll show you an example buyer broker agreement here in California. I'll show you what to look for, and I'll show you maybe some red flags in that. So this buyer contacted this agent. They said, let's do an agreement. And that buyer signed it and said, I am exclusively working with you. Let's go find a home. But then they bought a home with someone else. Well, what happened? Since August 17th, 2024, when the business practice changes went into effect, Lichtenstein said his firm has completed 381 buy-side transactions, and they have ultimately looked into 3 contracts for issues. For the brokerage community, if the buyer-broker agreement, also referred to as a BBA, is written up and executed properly and the buyer purchases, it means we will get compensated for the work we have done. That is reassuring on our end, the agent's end, and a sigh of relief as most every other profession gets paid as they do their job and with health and 401k benefits. Lichtenstein wrote in an email, our pay structure is by choice, and we get out of it what we put into it. But getting compensated is something we expect at the end of a deal. Just so you guys know, I hate when real estate agents refer to transactions and sales as deals. I feel like it really, really devalues them. It makes them seem like they're insignificant, small, or they're not important. And to me, like if I was a client and some agent was like, I'm working on your deal, I'd be like, no, you're working on my home purchase, which is the largest investment of my life. It's not a deal. But I digress. That's personal. According to Lichtenstein, at the end of 2024, he and his team were alerted by a mortgage broker that a buyer the mortgage professional knew was working with Ecofine Properties had just presented another offer with a different buyer's broker. So he was working with this agent. This buyer was also working with this lender. Well, this lender said, hey, agent, the buyer that you're working with is working with someone else. And that agent went, wait, we have an agreement. They can't do that. Well, they did. Buyer signed an amended buyer broker agreement. Yes. During the discovery related to the arbitration, Lichtenstein said his firm found that the day after they had alerted the buyer to the issue, one of the buyers signed an amended buyer broker agreement. I skipped a part up here. So they did notify. He said he said they immediately notified the buyer of the issue. So Lichtenstein called the buyer and said, hey, just so you know, we have an agreement. And if you buy a home, you have to buy it with me. Otherwise, if you buy a home with someone else, you're still on the hook to pay me. The buyer ignored the communication, resulting in Echo filing for arbitration after the transaction closed. During the discovery related to the arbitration, Lichtenstein said his firm found the day after they had alerted the buyer to the issue, one of the buyers signed an amended buyer broker agreement, swapping out the name of the original buyer for that of his mother. So 3 weeks later, another amendment to the contract saw things reversed with the mother's name swapped for that of the original buyer. So what happened is this agent called up and said, hey, buyer, seems like you're kind of messing around on me and you might be buying a house with someone else. Just so you know, we have a contract. That buyer ignored it. And the next day said, oh, you know what? We're just going to change this. I'm not really buying the house. Someone else is buying the house. And your agreement is with me, not this other person. Okay, very tricky. Just so you guys know, that doesn't work because in a court of law, a good lawyer will argue what was the intent. It'll be very obvious to the judge and the jury that the intent was to deceive and get out of this agreement. So that'll get thrown out pretty quickly. And so very clearly, this buyer knew they were in the wrong. Very clearly, they tried to kind of do some mischievous stuff to cover it up, and they caught it. Through arbitration, the arbitrator concluded that the buyer-broker agreement used by Ecofine Properties is unambiguous, and its terms were clearly stated. So the arbitrator said, yeah, there was no bait and switch. There was no trickery. It was very clear the agreement that they gave you. It was very clear what the expectation was, and you agreed to it. Additionally, the arbitrator found testimony from the buyer that he did not read the agreement before signing it, that the 180-day protection period for the agreement is excessive, and the agent from Ecofine Properties provided little to no benefit or help were unpersuasive. So they tried to argue, oh, it was an excessive agreement and they didn't do anything. Well, at the end of the day, you entered into a contract to do something and you did the opposite. Due to the arbitrator's findings, the buyer was found to have breached his contract by entering into a purchase agreement without the involvement of his Ecofine Properties agent and subsequently refusing to pay the commission to Ecofine Properties was entitled to based on the buyer's broker agreement. As a result, the arbitrator awarded the brokerage $24,000 due to the breach contract. This sum represented the 3% commission agreed upon in the buyer-broker contract of the purchase of the $800,000 property. Yo, this guy got hit with a $24,000 bill. Imagine that. And he agreed to it because when they made this agreement, the agent said, hey, just so you know, I charge 3% for my services. Now, again, we are going to negotiate and work and try very hard to get the seller to pay for that 3%. But if we can't, if they refuse and you still buy the house, then you, Mr. Buyer, have to pay us 3% of $800,000, which is $24,000. Now, the reason when you're a buyer that this isn't a big problem is because most of the time, one of two things is going to happen. Number one, the seller is going to agree to pay the buyer's agent commission. So this $24,000 would have been paid for by the seller. That's the most common thing. The other thing that may have happened is that the seller said, guess what? I'm not paying your 3% commission. So Mr. Buyer, you're going to have to pay that $24,000 yourself. Well, at that point, the agent might have been able to negotiate and said, hey, okay, I want 3%. How about you give me 2.5%? Is that okay? And the seller might go, okay, yeah, fine. You know, that's a little bit more agreeable. The buyer still doesn't pay. If the seller just says, I'm not paying, well, then at that point, the buyer could have had the option to say, well, I don't got $24,000 to pay you out of pocket, so I'm not going to buy this house. And it would have changed a lot of things, but that's not what happened. Instead, this buyer just went off, bought this house, neglected the agreement that they had with their current agent, and is now on the hook for $24,000. And now that buyer has to come up with $24,000 after they just put probably 10 to 20% down, after they just paid closing costs. Now they have to come out of $24,000 out of pocket to pay an agent that they didn't even use because of the agreement they entered. Again, before the federal government got involved and the DOJ ruled in favor of this class action plaintiff, this probably would have never existed. So this consumer is absolutely losing money on the DOJ settlement that was supposed to help consumers keep more money in their pocket. Lichtenstein noted that even if only 1% of transactions have an issue in a year with just 4 million existing homes, that could potentially mean 40,000 arbitration cases a year involving a purchaser of commission to a brokerage. We have no desire for this, but collections is appearing to be a new category for brokerage houses as a result of the BBA. Lichtenstein wrote, for purchasers, if you've committed to a realtor, then didn't try to pull, for purchasers, if you've committed to a realtor, then don't try to pull a fast one. Understand how much work is involved. The brokerage community takes a client on with no guarantee of being paid unless one buys a home. Agents put in tremendous amount of time and their knowledge, and that work is what educates a client and helps them to get a deal over the finish line. All right, guys. So there you have it. 24 grand from a buyer's pocket to an agent because they breached the buyer broker agreement. Guys, the buyer broker agreement is a contract. Please read diligently. If you have questions, ask a trusted third party, maybe a real estate attorney, maybe get in the opinion of a different, agent or broker, or heck, come into my stream and ask me questions. I'll give you the best advice I can. Can a brokerage place a lien? That's a great question. It wouldn't be like a mechanic's lien or anything like that because the contract is with the person. But I suppose you probably could, because the person is liable, and if that person owns real property and the real property is in the name of the person, and the lawsuit or the complaint is with the person, then I guess their property is subject to forfeiture or seizure if the judgment is made against them. Now, in this case, a lien probably wouldn't be helpful because a lien's probably only going to come due when there's a refi or a sale. And since this person just bought the home, it might be 20 years before they sell it. And if there's a lien on it, it's not going to do the brokerage any good. So my guess is the brokerage is just going to sue for 24 grand and make them pay. That's a good question though, MH. And I don't know the certain answer off the top of my head, but I would think that yes, that would be sort of an avenue. Nice tip: when interviewing an agent, we'll listen to the word they use for a transaction. Yes, It's a transaction. It's a sale. It's a purchase. It's not a deal. It's not a deal. We're not negotiating a used car. It's not a 2012 Toyota Camry. It's a freaking house, right? So that's my take on that. All right, guys. Well, we are at an hour and 10. I can't tell you how wonderful it has been to be back with you guys on stream. I know we have missed a couple weeks. I'm so happy to be back, and we'll be picking up the streams more consistently. Before we dip out, you guys know what comes next. You guys know the drill. If you guys are looking for a great real estate agent, one that is going to represent you well, one that can explain a buyer broker agreement, go over to workwithjoerealtor.com. It is actually a link in the chat right now. Bingo. And if you are looking for a realtor anywhere across the United States and even internationally, I've got a whole network of realtors, a whole team of them. And in fact, I just received word that some clients that I helped sell their home in Hesperia over the summer, I referred them to an agent in Vancouver, Washington, and they just closed on their home this last week. They called me up and they said, Joe, thank you so much for helping us find a competent agent. We had such a great experience and we owe it to you. So just one little snippet. So if you guys are looking to buy or sell anywhere, go to my website, workwithjoerealtor.com. You can hit this button here. You can hit this button here. You can hit this button here. And it'll take you to a little questionnaire you'll fill out. Then we'll schedule a time to talk. If you are in the greater LA County, Orange County, Riverside County area of Southern California, and you need a really great agent, good news, we can work directly together. So if you're thinking about buying or selling a home in 2026 as we head into the new year, let's get ahead of it. Let's start talking about strategy, numbers, market reports, what your neighborhood is doing, so you can go there and work with me directly. Alrighty, guys, that's going to do it for me tonight. Thank you so much for giving me some of your very, very valuable time. I appreciate you spending your Wednesday evening with me. We'll be back next week, and I think we're going to go over buyer broker agreements next week. I'll also dig up an article. I'll find a cool house to show you. In fact, I already have a really cool house to show you guys next week. It's another historic home. It's really cool. It's got a cool story too. So we're going to be checking that out. We're going to be talking about buyer broker agreements in light of this article. And we're going to be talking about some other news that's going on with the latest in real estate. And don't forget, right down here, please hit that thumbs up, like the stream on your way out. And if you're watching and you haven't subscribed to the channel, what are you doing with your life? Please subscribe to the channel, turn on alerts so you're notified of new streams and new videos when I release them. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Have a great evening. MH, thanks for hanging out. Innovative, as always, thanks for hanging out. David Matney, thanks for hanging out. And we had Robert. Robert was in here hanging out. So thanks, guys, for keeping me company. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your week. And I will see. Oh, Red's in here. Hey, Red. Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for hanging out. Everybody have a good week. I'll see you next time. Have a good night.